All right, there we are. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our little social media live session. I am Angela McCuiston from Music Strong, and today I am joined by Dr. Joanna Cowan White. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for your interest in helping musicians. And I know you are one, so.
Absolutely. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Because recently we had you on the Tuned and Strong podcast. And for anybody who doesn't know why they should go watch your episode or listen to your episode, can you give them a little bit of background, if you're okay with that, and who you are, what you do, and maybe a little teaser intro into what we talked about?
Sure. So I'm a flutist and performer and a professor at Central Michigan University. And a number of years ago, I had my own encounter with musicians' focal dystonia, which is, as you know, a confounding neurological problem that can suddenly make brain signals go awry so that you go to do a familiar thing like push a key down. Oh, this is something that you've trained for many, many, many years. So this happens to people who are very experienced at doing a certain task, like playing a musical instrument or playing tennis or playing golf. And the brain signals, a lot of things come together to make brain changes, and the brain signals suddenly are confusing. And you might go to push a key down, a very familiar trained motion, and all of a sudden your body is telling you to go the opposite way, so that things become confused, and you can't, something that's become so easy for you and so natural for you suddenly feels strange or different, or it doesn't work quite right. And it's very confounding. It's not that rare. We all know, musicians all know people with that problem. The couple have come up just in the last few days in the news, and it's very unfortunate. But because neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change, can happen in this negative way, you can also work to influence it in a positive way. And a lot of people try many, many different things and put a cocktail of approaches together and go around to use different brain signals that don't have the dystonic triggers, and so that you can access what you once could do so naturally again. And I feel really lucky. I worked on that for about 5 years. About 5 years ago, I returned to a real ease of playing and could get back to the place where I felt that it was fun to play. And I was still playing in my orchestras and my chamber groups, but suddenly I was back to being able to do it easily. So, but it's a long process, and brain retraining is tricky because everyone's brain is different, and you don't have a manual of how to fix it because everyone's brain is different. You have to work through many, many different approaches. And I tried many different things, but I feel really lucky to be still playing, making recordings, playing in my ensembles, demonstrating while I'm teaching. And so I feel very lucky.
So what were some of the things that you went through that, well, when you're trying to figure out, like, what is this that I'm going through? Because this is not, was this necessarily self-diagnosis, or was this clinically diagnosed? I mean, how did you figure this out? Because I know this is a question that comes up quite a bit.
That's a good question, because a lot of people don't know about dystonia, although there's enough written about it in the last decade. There are some people who are open about it, but a lot of people still don't know about it. So it takes a long time for some people to diagnose it. I had heard of it. I would mention it in my methods classes. So I had heard of it. I suspected it when this started to go wrong. It sort of fit the picture. But it took a while to get diagnosed because it was very subtle symptoms at first. Just things felt weird. Things felt off. I had it both. Focal means one part of your body, but I had it manifesting both in my embouchure and in my hands. Some people get it just one of those places, or it can go to other places in the body too. Or in an athlete, it can go to the muscles that do a certain specific task. It's task specific. That's how I would describe it.
So when you were going through this, you were trying to figure out, like, is this focal dystonia? Is it something else? How do I figure out what's going on? And I think you mentioned something in our podcast episode, which everybody please go check out, whether it's on YouTube. We've got the links in our bios and our pages, and Joanna does as well. But you can also go listen to it wherever you get your podcasts at the Tuned and Strong podcast. But there was something you mentioned. It was like trying to ride a bicycle, but backwards. Can you explain a little bit more about that? And what that meant?
Sure. So just trying to get my cat to get down there. Okay. So there's so Destin Sandland on YouTube, he describes a backwards bicycle that an engineering friend made for him that, you know, how when you ride a bicycle and you turn the handlebars one way and the bike goes that way, but his engineering friend rigged the bike so it would go the opposite way. And your brain is trained all this time to turn the handlebars the way that you know it goes. And that's just what you do. So to actually train yourself to do it a different way, the way this backwards bicycle works, is very, very difficult.
You said, so he had a bike that was rigged to turn one way or the other?
To turn the opposite way.
That's so weird.
And he shows these great videos of himself. And he actually taught himself how to ride it. And he shows videos of himself doing that. But then he poses the question, okay, well, now what happens when I go back to a regular bike? And it was really tricky because he had changed his brain so that he was able to use the different, to tell his brain a different instruction. So the point being that you can train your brain. You have to figure out how to do it. And what a lot of us do, because a lot of us tried many, many different things. And with dystonia, you're trying to do something in a slightly different way. So your brain doesn't get those dystonic triggers that have suddenly been corrupting your neural system. And so you do something in a slightly different way so that you can play easily rather than it being difficult. And it's not a cure, most people don't think, but it's getting around it. It's learning how to take a different path, use different pathways to do the same thing. And I feel good when I play.
You mentioned writing with the opposite hand, and I think like going into a room and turning on a light switch, but the wrong thing moves, right?
Right. That's right. The backwards bicycle was in the poem that I read you, that I had in the Journal of the American Medical Association. And that was in that poem about focal dystonia, musicians' focal dystonia.
So if you had some words of wisdom or some hope or some guidance to give to anybody who is dealing with this or thinks they might be dealing with this, what kind of things would you tell them?
Okay, so first of all, I do have, which I think is on your website, a link to the article I wrote, which just gives an overview of it, which might be helpful. But there's lots of stuff out there about focal dystonia. And the main thing is to seek out resources and be very, very persistent and find people who have actually managed to get through it and try many different things. It's very difficult, very frustrating, very identity crisis causing, since we do so much with our music and it's so much of a part of us, and for many of us, it's our living. But there are things you can try. There are things to do. There are people who are able to play easily through it. And it's not automatically, yes, you absolutely can solve it. It's easy to solve it, but there are things to try. And I sought out a lot of resources and worked a long time. And it took me about 5 years. I was still playing during that time, but it just didn't feel right. But I got back to the point where I was feeling really that I could play very easily again. Hopefully that'll give them a an idea of what kinds of things are in the episode. But we talked for a long time that day, so hopefully people who are interested can see more about the details. And I do talk in that hour about many things that I tried.
What were like the cues or the clues that you got that maybe this is what I'm doing? Or
okay, that's why I think that overview article might be helpful, because I describe all the different kinds of things that people begin to notice. Some of them are very subtle, some of them are dramatic, sometimes they happen all at once, sometimes they're over a period of time. But I think if you and there are many articles about it, mine is just one of them, but I really tried. I spent a long time on a sabbatical really putting it out there, summarizing some of the things, and so that might be a place to at least read about it. But there are many people that help others with it. I know you've interviewed Anna Detari, who works with people. There are many people out there who actually you can consult with about focal dystonia. But it's just important to seek out resources and to know that there are some things to try, and sometimes they can be successful.
So thank you for coming to speak to what we were talking about on the podcast. And if you guys are really interested in focal dystonia and what is going on and how to identify, and we've really got to start talking about it, because it won't go away if we don't start talking about it. And you did that really beautifully with your poems. And we'll put the link down below, but all of that is there because Joanna gives some really great resources.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the interview in the first place, and for getting the word out there.
Yes. Thank you for joining us. And I'm sorry today has been...
It's okay. There was no technical difficulty during the interview. So
like she said, please go check out the episode. We're going to put links everywhere. So hi.